survived the peak of the Libra full moon last night. I almost feel like it's funny. I'm very much exaggerating, but emotionally, it very much felt like one of those trying to survive it kind of nights. Like, just every bit of the fun house was really kicked up, and you may have noticed it within yourself. You may have noticed it with others. There's probably been a lot of distortions and projections and things like that. Now, interestingly enough, I wanted to talk about how this full moon is going to have effects for the next 6 months. And I'm really loving it because I got to see this happen and kind of get to gather the data about it last year. And I've been thinking about it a lot. I meant to do a reading like this before the full moon, but I think there was some shadow work that I needed to go through before the full moon before I could even like put the words in a proper train, get my ducks in a line kind of thing. Um, And remember, a line doesn't have to be a straight line, just some form of line where I can go, yes, that one, that word, that word, that word, and that word. So last year, it was actually in February. We had one of the first super full moons, and it was in it was in Virgo, while the sun was in Pisces. And I remember too, this was about the time that I really started to sink more into um, astrology and tarot and stuff. So I had gotten on, I was learning more about these, the seasons of the full moons and how they affect things and interact with other planets and asteroids and stuff, really like diving in. And I came across a couple of videos. I wish for the life of me I could remember the names of the wonderful people who made the videos because I would totally give them a shout out. But I'm sending those people my energy because I remember their faces, and if I see them, I'll share it. And a couple of them talked about there are certain moons that have a much longer effect on the rest of our year in general, and also like looking at what the moon is doing because it's so close to us, as well as what other aspects are doing. And I hesitated even on putting this for the next 6 months because it might actually be effects over the next year to the next first super full moon of next year. And I'm still learning about the cycles in terms of, I don't know if that next one is going to be like if the last one was Pisces Virgo and this one is Aries Libra, then the next one might be Taurus Scorpio. But I don't know. I'm going to look into it and learn and see if we can predict that ahead of time, or if that changes so often enough that it's, well, I'd imagine somebody somewhere, some wonderful nerd, I'm sure, has figured it out. Just not this one yet. Anyways, it's also good to have things that you don't know about. I think that's a good energy um, vibration that's going to be affecting us over the next year. Is kind of becoming comfortable with what we don't know, really embracing new experiences and adventures and stuff. But we'll get more into that. What I want to talk about first is how we can kind of confirm for ourselves what this did last time. And keep in mind, when I'm talking about New Year energy, I'm talking about the astrological New Year's, which ends with Pisces and starts with Aries. So Aries season every year is the new year astrologically. And that's why this one is well, see, that doesn't make sense. Because Pisces Virgo wouldn't have been the first. I'm gonna have to look up the rule to that too. I'm feeling like there's going to be a lot more videos where I show how much I don't know, and I love that because as a Capricorn with a Gemini rising, I often get pegged as the know-it-all, and I know a lot. I don't know everything. Definitely do not. Anyways, so last year we had the Sun in Pisces and the full super moon in Virgo, and I was listening to these astrologers talk about like how we can look at how that might affect things. Now, I know a lot of you watch many of the same readers that I watch too. We're all kind of part of this collective. Now, Virgo is often very much associated with two cards, the Six of Pentacles and the Knight of Pentacles, right? And and yes, you can attach the other earth signs to that, but those are the overarching energies. And what did we see a lot of last year? Well, first, I mean, let's look at that. So Virgo, we've got the Six of Pentacles and the Knight of Pentacles. And then Pisces is typically like See, Pisces is so, it goes around. Definitely the Page of Cups. So small emotional things, children, apologies, breadcrumbing, Easter eggs, things like that. And we could say the Moon card. Usually that's more Cancer than Pisces, but definitely Pisces. And so there's a lot of confusion, a lot of having faith. And then also with both Pisces and Virgo, we see, it's funny, it's like the difference between neuroticism, like I want to say like neuroses in terms of like trying to avoid change, trying to stick to certain routines, trying to like fears of abandonment stuff coming up. But Pisces also has a fair amount of that, but it's kind of on the other end of the spectrum, is like numbing out and going very like hippie in the grass staring at the sky for hours and hours and hours kind of thing, like checking out. And but both are ways of checking out, both are actually forms of control. And so we saw a lot of those things heightened over the last year. But on the positive side too, like the slow and steady approach of Virgo and the desire to do it right has also helped us correct a lot of things. And Virgo also rules the sixth house, which is all about health, self improvement. I liken it to the utility closet slash laundry room in a house. Like, it's where we prepare for things. It's where, like, when we say, I need to fix something and I don't have a tool right next to me, but I always keep like weird stuff in the junk drawer in the utility closet, or I have several sets of toolkits in there, right? Um, and we also saw like an increase to issues between messiness and cleanliness, and like hoarding versus like facing those emotional issues, especially with the Pisces stuff, which yeah, the shadowy side of increasing addictions and codependence and things like that. But we also had the positive side of really like marinating in spirituality. You know what I mean? And those things were really heightened in the first 6 months after they happened, which I believe was last February. And they really colored the rest of the year no matter what. And I believe it was until we had, I think it was the Taurus blue moon that ended up not replacing that energy, but like I think that's the one that we segued into. I'll have to check. It might have been the moon before that. No, excuse me. Taurus wasn't the blue moon. Taurus was the regular moon, and then we had the blue moon. But I think that Taurus Scorpio aspect was what got us for the next 6 months. I know we also had Uranus and Taurus, so that's where my mind is like, wait a minute, like how many things? But that's part of my point, though, is that this particular super full moon in Libra was also like, it was almost perfectly in time with the finger of fate aspect. And I think that has a lot to do with the clash of the Titans synchronicities that I've been seeing a fair amount, because we have Saturn, Chiron, and Vesta all in it's not a grand trine. It's, I'm trying to remember, somebody had said like a straight angle triangle. I know it's not an isosceles, but it'd be like this, but it's a tall one. So it they say that where it points is where the fate of things are. And I still need to look up which one, like, because there's two asteroids and the one planet. I don't know which one it was pointing to, but if you look that up, you can kind of have an idea of what is the karma that we are looking to really face over the next 6 months, maybe even the next full year. And then like the two planets that make up the other side, or well, it could be the asteroids pointing to Saturn, or it could be Saturn and an asteroid pointing to the other asteroid. So whatever the other two are, two aspects, that's the word I wanted. Those are the backing energies. They're the force to which pushes us towards that karma. But we can already see what it's likely dealing with, because we can look at the super full moon and the sun. And just as well, and like Pisces too was also very much a return on the X's, and it was, if you think about it, like our moon sign is our emotions, and then Pisces itself is all about emotions. Virgo is actually very emotional too, but it's the attempt to kind of like numb, well, not numb out, it's like to block out the emotions with material things, you know, safety routines, houses, money, things like that. But if you think about that, when the moon came out, it was highlighting a lot of emotional stuff. And with the sun being in Pisces, so that had an effect on us over the, well, at least the first 6 months since that happened in February. So what, February, March, April, May, June, July. Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, a fair amount of things happened in July and or August. So think about June, July, August of last year. Like, how did things change over or start to slow down? You may have had a lot of emotional communication with somebody, and then it started to slow down about that point. You know, it started to be overtaken by other energies. And so that sort of energy was really in there, like dealing with past people, dealing with romantic issues, and because of Six of Pentacles, like power exchange and consent issues and boundaries and material stuff, and how much are you giving to where. Like when that card is upright, usually you have a decent balance, but if it's reversed, you're giving too much to one area of your life and not enough to another. Likewise, that can also be one of the Dom subcards. So there, you know, there's a lot of issues to do with power and control, and there can be, especially with the Moon card in there and the Page of Pentacles, there could be a lot of confusion about like who are your actual friends, because 12th house stuff can be, sometimes it's hidden enemies, but more so it's outright enemies, like people that are right in front of you. But that doesn't mean that either you see them or that you realize that it's them. It can, because Pisces has so much to do with illusions, it can be that like you started to believe that somebody who was your friend was a frenemy, and somebody who was your frenemy was your friend. And there was a fair amount of karmic energy coming up too, like for a lot of people in a lot of different ways, parentally, friendship wise, exes, currents, things like that. So looking at that, if you think about like how did things go from February 2020 to approximately July 2020, and what sort of things changed about that time in your life that, you know, they still had the same pattern or energy, but like maybe they changed in the 3D in some way, you know, Pisces stuff. And I know on my end it would be like losing a lot of the 3D confirmations, and not just losing them, like choosing to release them in favor of faith and spirituality. And the Moon card very much speaks to faith, like the ever unfolding road on the card shows us that all we can sometimes know is that there's a path ahead of us, and we can keep walking it, we can go back, we can sit still, but we're not always going to know what's ahead or what's behind us on that path. We can only know that the path is there, and we can choose to have faith that, one, there's never going to be a final destination, you know, unless you choose to make something your stopping place, and even then there's going to be side roads, but you're never really going to know what's going to happen. And that's part of manifestation too, which is effectively a spiritual thing, to where you got to decide what you're going to have faith in. Are you going to have faith that the world sucks and it's always against you and, you know, all that icky stuff? Or are you going to have faith that everything that your heart wants, that you want, everything that you can be, all the successes, all the good experiences and stuff, that they're ahead on that path, and that no matter how icky the current space is that you are, if you continue to believe and have faith that it'll be good, that it will be good, right? Um, and so take all that, and if we apply that now, let's look at the Libra Aries axis. I've been enjoying learning about the Libra Aries axis because it's very interesting. We go from kind of this challenge between the 3D and the spiritual that we had with Virgo Pisces into, so if we look in a house, okay, so Aries would be the mirrors. I had a hard time figuring this one out, but Aries, it's the first house, it's the ego and the identity, which are effectively 3D things. Like we are not the body, we are not our job, we are not those things, but we do tend to apply those to our identities, right? Um, and ego has so many uses and also so many pitfalls. So We have to decide how much of it we allow in, and we really have to go through different ego deaths to even really understand it and be the ones in the driver's seat, not our ego. But also, Aries is considered the infant of the zodiacs, and but also the emperor. So you can see this dualistic thing about, like, I mean, emperor is stability and forethoughtfulness, and being able to manage the many complicated things that go on in your kingdom or queendom, right? Now, it's also infantry, which is, well, it's funny because of the relation to the deity Aries. So it's being armed and ready. That it's the fighty energy. It's the most often time when we have that fight me feeling, especially if you've got like Aries moon or rising or Mars. But because of the infantry, the being an infant, you can see a lot of infantilism. And also, like, think about it, when we are an infant, when we are freshly born, we don't have stability. We can't even lift our heads. We're fresh and new, and we rely on other people to help us get to a point to where we can roll over and sit up and hold our own heads up and feed ourselves and learn to walk and things like that. And Libra is on the other side of that. So whereas Aries is the self, the image you see in the mirror, the things you think about yourself, your ego and id and things like that, Libra is relationships. So self and relationships. And Libra is all about balance between self and relationships. And whereas Scorpio is all about like tantra and sex and taboos and that those are deeper forms of intimacy, but on their own they're not necessarily intimate. Libra is it's the bathroom. Like, I mean, it's pretty fucking intimate. It's pretty darn intimate if you can brush your teeth while your partner is like pooping on the toilet, or that you can walk in and get something real quick and go out, or you know what I mean. Think about things that are genuinely intimate, knowing real secrets, the embarrassing stuff, the kinks and fetishes, things like that. And it's more about communication because it's an air sign, and typically it's very, so it's going to be swords energy. Though Aquarius, oh wow, I don't know why I went into Aquarius. I was thinking of the star card. Maybe that'll be relevant in terms of things going on. But Libra is actually specifically associated with the Justice card in the major arcana. And King and ish in terms of the pip cards and the royal cards. I'm hesitant to put it on either gender. I think both are kind of there. And like Queen of Swords is very like, she's, well, it highlights communication specifically. Like, she's always got one side of her hidden. And so feminine energies, I mean, we may notice that we are holding back a certain side of ourselves that we want to communicate, or it may be about learning to communicate those sides. And masculines might notice that all the feminines are something hidden on one side. Now, I'm actually going to say that that can go either way, because we can all be in feminine or masculine energy, and I know a lot of this balancing is also to do with helping us be both sides. So King of Swords energy would be very like transformative and also challenging any sort of narcissism, and like King of Swords doesn't have any problem like cutting out the things that don't work for him. Like, he's pretty logical about it. So when in masculine energy, regardless of your gender, you might see a fair amount of that feeling going on, like just cutting it out. It's also about setting healthy boundaries, especially in terms of communication. And there's probably going to be a need, or not a need, like a big desire for a lot of communication. Now, that Queen of Swords energy, too, when in that, it's very much like, you can come towards me, but you better come correct, because if you don't, I will cut you. And it doesn't mean like cut you as in like an actual cut, but like verbally. Verbally, like the boundaries are clear. And part of what she's like keeping hidden is that is that side of things when she's in upright. Now we should also look at the, I was gonna say the overturned side, but I meant reverse, but overturned. Interesting. So when somebody's in, like, say, ego energy or karmic energy on the Libra side of things, we're going to look at the Justice card first. Justice and upright is about bringing balance. It's about learning karmic lessons, ending karmic cycles, being accountable, facing the issues of injustice, things like that, ending contracts, starting new contracts, things like that. And in reverse, we see a lot of injustices. We see karmic cycles coming in. We see harder karmic lessons being learned, things like that. And because of the association with Libra and Venus, it's usually a lot to do with love-related issues, family-related issues, but it can have to do with work too. And I mean, there might be a fair amount of people that were so deep in the Pisces Virgo axis last year that they allowed things to get out of balance, and so they might see effects from their relationship stuff affecting their work or their physical health or things like that. And vice versa, if you worked on doing that stuff, even if you had to work alone, you might start seeing justice coming in for you. You might not, like, money that was stagnant before might come in. People who were being, like, rude are being respectful. People who, like, if you've been waiting on a karma, it's funny, the song in the radio is Karma by Queen Naja. Talk about synchronicities, right? You might start seeing a lot of synchronicities that manifest into the things that you were unfairly having to wait on last year. Now, that King and Queen of Swords in reverse, the Queen of Swords in reverse very much is the danger. Like, she's well, so is the King of Swords in reverse. The King of Swords in reverse is one of the top narcissism cards. It's like completely void of empathy and not caring about your feelings and things like that. And it's funny, actually. I was just thinking the Queen of Swords in upright, it's like that song, "Don't forget to come and pick up your feelings," right? Like, she's like holding on to that energy of, like, I know my worth, I know my value, and I know that I have your feelings sitting right here in this throne with me, and if you want them, you can have them, but you better come correct. It feels like that's a fair amount of the energy collectively, and I know from those in my tribe and those that I talk to on here, that's definitely a big energy. Is like, you want to disrespect me, you want to treat me like that, you want to have communication issues with me, what you going to think about my Queen of Swords? You know what I mean? But it's not without a reasonable sense of humor about it, especially if you've done a lot of your shadow work. Anyways, Queen of Swords reversed, though. I mean, I had a tarot reader once pull a card out, and it wasn't about me, it was about somebody that I was asking about, and it was like, is this person, like, scary? Like, really scary? Are they dangerous? Do they have mental health challenges? And I said, yeah. And they said, yeah. Like, I could tell, like, not just because the Queen of Swords was in reverse, but, like, some of the other cards around. But when she's in reverse, this can be a very mentally unstable person. Whereas, like, King of Swords in reverse, they're pretty stable in their narcissistic energy. And you could see this coming from people that you know, or at least you have a strong intuition, because swords are also about intuition, that they're not actually narcissists, but they're behaving that way. But they're pretty straight and consistent about being like that. They can have reactive moments if you really push them, but if you just leave it there, they're pretty stable in that energy. Whereas the Queen of Swords reversed is like instability. Like, I don't even know. There's like so many things about it. It's really unstable, logical energy. It's actually very illogical, very reactive. And so whether you, in fact, like, if, because they're so interchangeable. So I have a feeling we'll see this going on within ourselves and within others around us. It's because we're learning to balance feminine and masculine, and depending on where you are in your healing journey, where others around you are in their healing journey, it's not like, you're going to have one person who's always in Justice upright or reverse, or King or Queen of Swords upright or reverse. It's probably going to be back and forth. And definitely big highlight on communication issues, that's for sure. And so, and then if we mix that in, and we already talked about the Aries, so the Emperor energy in upright and reverse. The other card it's often associated with is the Page of Wands, upright and reverse, which is an upright, it's good news, new adventures, kind of, it's like the energy of you feel like you're taking giant steps on a grand adventure, but you're actually still just taking small steps. But small steps are still steps. It's just that your perception of them might be a little bit off, but not in a bad way, because in upright it's like you're trying. It's kind of Fool card energy, like I'm trying, which some people also associate the Fool card with Aries. So we could add that in as a third and have a little balance in there. And then if we look at it in reverse, so Emperor in reverse, like, I mean, that's, was it divine masculine in reverse? It's instability. It's like getting really emotional when people need you to be stable and secure. It's the castle crumbles. It's Humpty Dumpty falls off the wall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put him back together again, right? It's that kind of energy, and it's not, it's also the energy, if we look at the Aries descriptions and things, of masculines who are very emotional but are trying to cover it up with lack of emotions, things like that. But then if we add in the Page of Wands in reverse, that's usually bad news and no progress, and being in a childish attitude about it. Not necessarily the poor me victimhood energy that we saw with the Pisces full moon, but it's similar, and they do connect, kind of Venn diagram like, is that it's not fair. Like, I fucked up, but I should just be forgiven. Like that kind of energy. Or, yeah, I know that I screwed up, but I'm throwing a tantrum about it right now, and I'm not gonna address it. I'm not gonna face it. I'm gonna look over there. Ooh, look at that shiny object. See, it pleases me so much. I just need to stare at this shiny object some more, and then I'll feel better. And then you don't, and then you're like, right? That frustration energy, which when on my astrology app, Astro Matrix, that's what it called this full moon, was moon of frustration. And I was like, oh boy, okay. And then let's look at the Fool. So the Fool and upright, like, that's a grand adventure. That's faith. That's it's new adventures. It's things like that. I don't know. I just said Stu. I don't know if you know someone named Stu, either by actual name or other name, but maybe that'll be relevant to you over the next at least 6 months. I know in reverse, we see that the Fool's faithfulness turns into naiveness. Like, he gets himself into a fair amount of hot messes. But the good thing about the Fool, whether reversed or upright, is that the Fool learns, right? So even if the Fool is in reverse and he's like, what the hell? I got myself into a hot mess, like steaming pile of hot mess, like forgot to churn the compost pile and it lit itself on fire one day, kind of hot mess. But the Fool, so unlike the Emperor and the Page of Wands in reverse, the Fool is he's like, I'm gonna throw a fit about this because it's just not, but he goes, you know what though, I'm gonna remember to do this right next time. I'm going to put in on my calendar, or put an alarm on, that I need to remember to churn this compost every so often, or the heat is going to build up so much it's going to light on fire, and I'm not going to have the compost that I worked so darn hard to have, right? And we can apply that to other areas in our lives. Like, if we don't maintain our relationships in healthy ways, if we split our focus too many times, we're going to lose more than one thing in our lives. If we try to be in player energy, to where we're constantly focused on, it doesn't have to be relationships, but typically relationships, like if you've been the type of person that's like a yes man or a yes woman, and you're like, you don't want anybody to be unhappy with you, then you end up trying to do too much to please everybody. It's very codependent energy, and it seems like that sort of energy leaves you out of balance. And then you find that as time has passed, you have not accomplished almost anything that you personally wanted to accomplish because you sunk your time so much into others. Now, the other thing is, Aries and Libra, because they are both about relationships in a sense. It's funny. So Aries would be in upright energies of any kind, in evolved energies, would be positive independence, being single and not being afraid of being alone forever, being confident in your ability to pay the bills on your own, be a parent on your own, do things like that, and to be able to say, you know what, this is my kind of fun, and it's okay if nobody else likes it. I can enjoy it, and I don't have to take it personally if others don't like it. Um, and then Libra is very much that, like, we can't do everything alone. Take running a business for that matter. You can do, I can go through stories of how many businesses I've started on my own and how much of the work I did myself, and you can do that for a while, but you can't do it forever. And part of it is because if like not if like when you succeed, because I've found more people actually fail because they succeeded faster than they expected to, rather than because like it didn't get up and running. Like if they had a good idea and it got contagious and it got too successful before they were expecting it to, it often falls apart. But we see both sides. Like if you don't have a good team, a good community, a good collective, a good tribe, a good family, a good relationship, it makes it difficult to keep going, right? And this is where we look into aspects of healthy interdependence, right? Now, in between those two aspects, independence and interdependence, we see things like codependence and dependence and toxic independence, things like that. To the and I say they're in the middle because I think that the other two are the main focus, but they're actually more in the middle. The extremes would be like super dependence, like you always must rely on other people, and then um, you would see codependence, which is you can do a fair amount of things independently, but you always feel like you have to be locked into relationships with multiple people in your lives. And then independence is you're comfortable on your own. You're not, you go through normal human cycles and stuff, but you're not feeling like you can't go on if you're not in a relationship or if you don't have the person that you want with you right next to you, and you feel like you could be single or you could be a relationship. You're not like overly bitter and resentful about love in general, but you have healthy boundaries, and you're not like just diving into the first person that'll take you kind of thing. And then you have like toxic independence, right? To where that's the other extreme of dependence, codependence, is to where you don't let anybody in. You like completely constipate your emotions, and you pretend like you don't have any. I'm fine, right? What is it? The dog in the room full of fire, and he's like, "This is fine. I'm fine. This is good." Like pretending like the room is not on fire, right? And so all of those issues are really highlighted this year. And I think that's part of why, not part of why, I have a sense that that's why we're likely to, I mean, we're already seeing a lot of readers even predicting union energies if you're in the twin flame journeys, and like karmic corrections, good things coming in, and I don't know, like a lot of graduates of various different aspects. It kind of makes sense, especially going from Pisces, Virgo to Aries, Libra. It really is like that new year stuff. Anyways, those issues are highlighted. So over the next 6 months, specifically, likely a little bit after that, that's likely what we're going to see, like a kind of a balancing. If you've been over giving, especially, it's been super easy to do it with all the energy of Pisces and Virgo of last year. If you were the over giver, if you were the chaser, if you were the person who said sorry first, if you were the forgiver, if you were the redeemer, things like that, that energy is likely going to give way for you to, I mean, you might bounce into the other direction and be too rigid for a little while. You might go into maybe not toxic independence, but definitely bouncing into the other extreme a little bit, which is not necessarily bad, depending on who you're relating with and what you want to do with your life. That can be a good thing. For some of you, that means totally cutting off people that were holding you back, because that can happen, especially with Pisces energy. People that you find you thought were true loves or great friends were actually karmics, and they were there to help you learn to stand up for yourself. And both Aries and Libra have a lot of that energy about standing up for yourself. And as I was saying, it's very much learning to have balance between self and others. Like, if we rely too much on our relationships with other people, we don't have healthy independence, which still exists even in a healthy interdependent relationship. And we're social creatures. It's not just about, like, I need you to carry the water while I chop the wood so that we can get it all back before it gets too late and we end up, you know, dehydrating and freezing overnight. It's also that it's more fun that way, you know, and so we might see a lot of, what kind of contrast are we choosing for our lives? What kind of experience do you want to have? I also feel like it'll be definitely a year that'll have to do with ending and creating contracts, ending old contracts, ending. Oh wow, that's funny. Big Epiphany and Tingles just came in because I recognize some of this energy came in last year, but a lot of it was, well, some of it went through and a lot of it was thwarted by the emotionalness of Pisces. And so this year it might be that agreement that you wanted to have about work or time or communication or positive growth or co-parenting or things like that, that's going to come through in a logical, stable way. Doesn't mean it'll come through that way first. We're humans. We tend to like to make the mess first and then set it up as we clean it up. But if you've been on the side of injustices over the last year and you've had to be more patient than a person should have to be, or there's been like almost no communication, just breadcrumbing and stuff like that, it's likely that this year you're going to see an increase in communication, an increase in being treated fairly, an increase in the karmic justice. Whereas the other side of that is that if you've been giving too much energy away to those who aren't appreciating it, and you've been neglecting putting it where it should go, then it's likely that the ways that you're going to want to be done with that imbalance, it's going to feel icky. You're not going to like that. And you're also likely to look at the areas where, not just that you need people in your life, but that you want people in your life, you know? Yeah, you can be single and you can live on your own and you can do pretty much everything for yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that, but is that who you want to be? You want to be like mountain man or mountain woman on a cabin who, like, only sees people maybe every 3 months and you do everything else yourself? And I mean, if that's what you want, go for it. If that's not what you want, then you might, like, think about it like when you're single and you're living on your own, you can decide who you want to have come over or not come over. You can decide how often you want people to come over or not come over. You're never surprised by anyone else bringing anyone over. And so you could conceivably, like, hide away and not do anything for like months and months. But after that point in time, you might start thinking, you know what, I'd like my good friend to come over. I'd like my sibling to come over. I'd like my kids to come over. Like, things like that. And new adventures are also highlighted, mostly by the Aries energy, but Libra energy too. And especially when old karmic contracts are ended, we tend to have, like, even if you create a new contract, typically they're not going to lock you in the way that the old ones did, because a part of that interdependence balance is freedom. I think that's another big energy. I think it's also, in fact, I know that because of both the Aries and the Libra energy, and it being the justice energy, that this is likely going to be a year when, how do I even put it? Like lies of last year, lies of the years before are likely to be clarified this year. And we've already been seeing a little bit of that energy creeping up towards this full moon, and I think that's going to continue. Well, we'll really see more of that in the readings or not, but there's a lot of the throat chakra healing. And the swords often do have to do with speaking. The wands more so, but both of them have to do with communication. And so it's likely that, like, if you've been in situations, either you or somebody else has had a really hard time speaking their truth, like Ace of Swords, baby, like, speak your truth. That this is the year to do that. And that creates a lot of freedom all on its own. Like, you're just the not carrying the weight of it is one part of it. And the other part of it, too, is that you tend to find out who your friends actually are when you are being authentic. And you tend to attract people that are way better for you. Even if you pull in a couple of karmics that learn a few more lessons, they typically get you to the next level where you can then attract, like your soul tribe and stuff like that. I feel like some of the energy is kind of petering out in this. Oh, let's talk about if we add in the energies of Libra and Aries, specifically the independence versus interdependence and all the stuff that goes in that bag. We also add in the finger of fate aspect, and that really looks towards healing issues of fears of abandonment and proper self-care, healing ourselves, like being responsible for our own healing and our emotions, like not blaming so much for other people. Vesta is about thresholds, so we might see a fair amount of moments where we hit a threshold moment. It might be that a boundary is hit and you change directions, you pivot, you say something else, you do something else, you go somewhere else, or you might start a new spiritual journey or a new job or something along those lines. Or you may, vice versa, decide to end a new journey that you had created last year that you couldn't quite see how icky it was because of all the illusions that Pisces energy brings in, and that we were so focused on material stuff, 3D confirmations, while learning how to balance in that energy, that now you're starting to see that you invested too much in a situation that was doomed when it began, either because of the way you started it or just because of the other people involved, and you may come back across the threshold. Like, it's not necessarily always just walking across the threshold forward. Sometimes you go backwards, but it's a backwards forward. You're never regressing necessarily. It might seem like that sometimes, but we're always going forward. Like, time, you typically don't ever see running backwards, right? But sometimes it can feel like that, and I feel like that might be an overall energy that we're going to see too, is that feeling like we're going backwards, feeling like we're going back in time, feeling like we're back in a place that we were in last year or years ago, things like that. And especially with the switching from the Piscean into the Aries energy, it is a lot of that, like looking at how mature we've been or not been, looking at how mature or immature the people around us are, being challenged to be more mature, to be healthier, to, I don't know. Anyways, so thresholds with Vesta, fears of abandonment and like wounded healer stuff, Chiron, and then Saturn is like Big Daddy Karma, paying your karmic debts, paying your physical, like earthly debts, making situations right. It's also Father Time, and so that it makes sense that they're all intermixing with time. And I do know a lot of the readings leading up to this one brought out that patience card in the Divine Energy deck, and it's got a clock in an angel's heart, and I think that's also being highlighted, especially for those on a twin flame journey, but in general. I think that there might be a fair amount of those who feel like remember I was saying that if you've been in chaser energy, overgiving, things like that, that you might go the other way and just be like, no, I'm not giving more. Not necessarily giving less per se, but definitely reducing it down, trying to get to that healthy balance of not giving too much, not giving too little. Well, those who have been in runner energy are likely to go the other way as they learn also how to get to the proper balance in the middle. And so if you stop chasing somebody who's been running, it might be that you see that they suddenly start running after you, and they're telling you stop running, stop making all these boundaries, stop, like, I'm trying to get your attention, I'm trying to talk to you, I'm trying to do this and this and that, or I don't know. But it's, we're when oftentimes when we get into balance, sometimes we have to go the opposite energy to learn those lessons and then be able to come into balance at that point. I don't know, I have a picture of a gyroscope in my mind that like pops on, one of those, the toy ones, and like sometimes they, like, when you first spin them, they'll wobble a little bit, but as the gravity hits it, it gets, it starts to be able to stably spin around on its own, and because of the way that it's made, it can keep going on its own for quite a long time. And then you got to pick it up and do it again, right? So think of that as kind of that energy, that rebalancing energy. When we spin ourselves off, yeah, it's a little bit wobbly, but it'll balance itself out, and that'll go on for a little while until it does run out of energy, and then we refill our own cups and we do it again. But we're not, because we can see that it's going to wobble when we get started on it, we're not as put by the instability in the beginning. We're like, oh, like it could be starting new relationships. Maybe you connect with a soulmate, or maybe you end something with a karmic, whether good or bad soulmate, and you decide to try to create some stability in a relationship that you had stronger roots in before, and it's a little wobbly. Or maybe they've connected with a soulmate at this point, and so now you're seeing the karmic return of what you did in there. But because you see what happened, because you saw the patterns, or because you know them, or things like that, now you're having to realize, okay, yeah, there's going to be a little instability, especially if you screwed up, and be like, okay, I know I'm going to have to work a little bit at this. That's fair enough. But you're not as freaked out by it. You might be at first, though. Especially if this person has been pursuing you, or been chasing you, or been waiting for you, and suddenly, bam, they're not. They're not only doing that, they're holding stronger boundaries with you. They're dating and relating with other people when they were waiting for you. Like, that might totally throw you off at first. You might be like, what the heck just happened? Especially if you just got out of a karmic contract because of that justice card energy, and you like assumed that they would be waiting, or or you had a fear that they would stop waiting right as soon as you got free. Then that energy then comes in and manifests, and you got to face that. And that reminds me of it too, like, that works both ways. If you've been chasing and you feel like you've been waiting because you keep getting told that the minute that you release the situation is when they come back, and you've been dealing with, fears and funhouse mirror reflections about, like, okay, so in order to get to this place where I can let go, I have to let myself be mad, or I have to pursue other distractions, or I have to do something different because I can't just sit here and do it. But then that the minute you do, they're going to come back in. You're still going to be challenged to hold your boundaries, to not just run back into chaser energy, and that's going to be weird for you. You might also feel like it's too good to be true, and this is one of those years, especially 2021, with the 5, the Hierophant energy in there, and the 21 energy, the 2 and 21 energy, the High Priestess and the World in there. There's likely to be a lot of rebalancing of situations that you may have given up hope on, where you may have finally allowed yourself to say, you know what, I've been hurt too many times by this person, or this aspect, or doing things this way, that I don't trust it anymore. And you're going to be challenged to ask yourself, what kind of contrast do you really want? Do you want the contrast and the challenge of learning to completely release a situation, a house, a home, a relationship, a family, things like that you really, really wanted? Or do you want the contrast of learning to recognize when somebody really has changed, when they really do mean it, when it's better to put your sword in your lap? You don't have to put the sword down, Queen of Swords, but if you did put it in your lap, so that as they approach you, yes, they know that you are armed and you are ready and you are witty and you got some spicy tortillas for them if they cut out a line, but they don't see the sword up against, in front of your face, so they can look at you, so that you can look at them, so that you can really learn to trust your intuition, which may be contrary to what you've been thinking. Like, especially if this person has been very, like, King of Swords reversed energy, not communicating, no contact, being very superficial, like using illogical logic to try to avoid situations, or they've overworking or investing in imbalanced situations, things like that. Like, you may have had to have gotten to the point where the only way that you could release yourself from that dynamic was to say, yeah, they're too sick. They're not healed. They're narcissistic. They're whatever it is. You had to allow yourself to get upset enough to hold yourself back, to have those boundaries. And a lot of times we get told, like, when somebody's done that with you and you are done, don't let them back in. Like, the society does that too. It's very much like, don't do it. Don't allow them back in. Just total gray rock. Don't just go there. But your intuition is what's going to be key. And if you've been working on a lot of your healing work, then that Piscean energy that we saw floating through the year, especially with all the Uranus energy, was very much about intuition. Even all the Mercury retrogrades, well, all the retrogrades, like when we get retrogrades, we're often challenged to use our intuition, our third eye, our crown chakra to see things, and not necessarily to have to see them. Like, I'm looking at a lake in front of me. I know there are fish in the lake. And I can't see the fish. I don't see them jumping. I don't see them getting anything. I see fishermen out here. They're fishing, so they know there's fish in there. They can't see them, but they know there's fish in there. And they also know that it might be frustrating to fish on a wet, weathery day. Or if there's a lot of herons and cranes out also fishing. And the herons and cranes also know that there are fish out there. I don't need to see the fish in the water to know that there are fish in the water, right? And so there's that mixture between the knowing with a K, that logically there's going to be fish in there. Like, there's other animals around. They're going after the fish, even if they weren't. Bodies of water typically carry fish. It's that logic of, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. But also the knowing with G, as in, like, I could come out here and not see any birds and not see any fishermen, and it's a man-made sort of lake. It talks about swimming. There could be no fish in the lake, but I'm going to assume, until I know otherwise, that there are fish in the lake. Or I might see a bird amongst the ducks that it doesn't look like a duck, it doesn't quack like a duck, but it walks like a duck. I could probably still assume it's probably either a duck or it's related to a duck. But I don't know. I'm not an avian professional. I know a fair amount about birds because I like feathers and I like the meanings of them, but I don't know everything about birds. Somebody could come along and be like, that thing's more closely related to a vulture than a duck, you know? But it doesn't hurt me any to assume that it's some kind of duck, right? Um, and likewise, like, we often see geese walking among ducks, right? And they can look like a duck in a way, especially if you don't know what a goose looks like, but you know what ducks look like. And it walks like a duck. It doesn't quite sound like a duck. It kind of. I mean, a honk isn't the same as a quack, but if you don't know, if you don't have the context of it, you might think logically, okay, it's probably some kind of duck. But you know that it's not. Like, or even though that's logical, that it might not be a duck. And I think that, it's weird as it is to describe it, especially with all this, like, leaving Piscean energy, and we still have Mercury in Pisces, so it's very abstract communication and thinking, is that you might know that somebody, or somebody in various situations, is quacking like a duck and walking like a duck and sounding like a duck, but they're not really a duck. Almost like a parrot or a parakeet that is, like, around other birds. They will imitate them, but you know that a parakeet is not a cockatiel. You know that a cockatiel is not a cockatoo or a crow or anything like that. Or if you see, oh, what was it? I watched a video the other day where a mother cat rescued some baby hedgehogs, and they were suckling with her, and she was nursing them and taking care of them just like they were baby kittens. And who knows? Did she know that they weren't cats? We don't know. Do we know that, like, and we can look at the situation and say, well, we know those aren't cats. The people even tried to separate them and like give them appropriate milk and keep them separate so that the actual kittens wouldn't get hurt and the mom wouldn't get hurt, but they kept going back and forth to each other. Like, it didn't make any sense. It was a total absurdity, but it worked. Life found a way. And who cares whether the hedgehogs knew that the mama cat was not a mama hedgehog, or if the mama cat knew the hedgehogs were not kittens, or if the kittens and hedgehogs knew they were different. Who cares? They all got the sustenance that they needed to grow. And so it's a lot of that energy of embracing the absurd, in terms of, even if it looks just like a duck and does everything like a duck, your intuition can tell you whether or not it's a duck, you know? You could see a crow down amongst a bunch of ducks, and it's acting just like the ducks, and it doesn't make any of its sounds, so you don't know, but you know that that does not look, it's not the same as thinking that a goose is a duck. A crow is obviously a different bird, any sort of a water bird, right? I think a fair amount of the energy, too, will be about patience, because Aries is a lot to do with patience. So is justice. So is divine timing and that karmic energy. It's about learning to have patience. It's about taking the training wheels off and really putting things to the test. It's about new adventures. It's about growing up without forgetting that being a grown up does not mean that we like completely neglect our inner children. And likewise, not neglecting physical children. It highlights a lot to do with kids, both in the sense of Libra being about interpersonal relationships, like between mom and dad, and Aries being about children itself, our inner children and our actual children, how we were treated as children, things like that. I think because of the Libran aspect, well, I think because of the axis, we're definitely going to be seeing a highlight on mother-father wounds, childhood wounds, things like that, but it'll be different. And I'm not 100% sure how different. And I'm already going on about an hour that I've jabbered on about this subject, so I'm probably going to cut this video pretty short here. Or pretty soon here. I don't know why I said short. My brain was saying don't say short, and I said short anyway, so I don't know, maybe things will be shortened, especially if you are finding ways to embrace this energy in positive ways. Maybe because you went upright, Queen of Swords, and Fool card, and you're like, I don't know, you're being a positive communicator, but you're also having healthy boundaries, and you're not taking no crap, and you're being the boss that you know you are, that things will happen a lot faster than you thought that they would. Also, swords are a lot to do with prayer. I think there's going to be definitely a big focus on prayer energy, both in the sense of how we talk to ourselves in our heads, and how we talk to spirit, and how we interact with others in terms of prayer. Like, how do we use it? And that can also bend into like spell work and manifestation. The words that we allow ourselves to use in our own minds and that come out of our mouths or go into text, things like that, they make a difference on what we manifest. And I already know that a fair amount of the energy coming in too is very much that you're getting what you asked for. So if what you asked for was like a loving, healthy communication situation, you're likely to get that. But if what you asked for was to be left alone, or you were lying a lot to try to cover up things, even if you felt like it was for a good reason or a good cause, you might first have to go through the energy of actually getting what you wanted, of not like, not of people not asking, but people specifically telling you, I don't want to know, I don't want to hear, I don't want the opportunity to be hurt by what you say or what you do or how you might lie, even if you totally committed to yourself, made a new personal contract not to lie, you know? depends. Like, think about what you thought about most often over the last year. That stuff is likely to start manifesting now. And you're really going to be challenged to think about, what did you pray for? Who did you pray for? How did you pray for them? Did you pray for the best for somebody? Did you pray for somebody to learn lessons that help them heal? Or did you pray that they fail? Did you pray that people would think that it was their fault, not yours? Did you empower yourself with authenticity and focus and say, yeah, this is all of me? Did you take yourself off the pedestal and say, look, I'm not perfect. I have moments of drama. I have times when I don't say the right things or do the right things. Or did you try to put yourself and everyone else on a pedestal and say, no, I'm never weak, and I never have any problems, and there's never anything wrong, and I don't have feelings, and stop asking me about them. you know, that sort of energy is coming in. And that comes in regardless. Like, we have many smaller and bigger cycles. So that's really what karma is. It's not punishment. It's not like this predetermined set of things that we're definitely going to learn. It's, what have you most consistently been thinking about? Because that's your communication with the universe. That's what collects in the quanta and the electromagnetic energy that goes into all things around you. And you can see kind of an example of that is, look around you. Have things around you been growing? It can even be as simple as, is your garden or the area around front of your house like growing with abundant weeds? Hello, Elizabeth. Is it growing with it doesn't even have to be weeds. It could come in a weird way. It could be garbage or something like that. But the garbage would be more of a, like, you're overwhelming yourself. But look for, are things growing around you? Is your money growing? Is your garden growing? Are the weeds growing? Is your confidence growing? Whereas if you look around you, and what you've been seeing over the last years, that things around you have been breaking. Like fridges, plumbing, toilets, dishes, things like that. Or or your situation has been getting where you have to have more and more boundaries, and everybody else has to have more and more boundaries with you, and you're like miserable and messy, and you're jumping from thing to thing to try to fix it. Like, that could be an indication that the situation that you've been in has been breaking down, right? And that means letting go of that. Those situations will likely be released, especially not see it now. It's probably already been happening. Or if you're in it, you may know that this is coming, but not be ready to speak the words. Like, maybe a relationship has been over. You've already been thinking about being single and living on your own, and like kind of fantasizing about all the things that you could do with that time and space, but you're not ready to speak it yet. Maybe you're going to try to get them to speak it, or they're going to try to get you to speak it first. Because it's not always a pleasant thing, but you know that it's ending. Or if you're on the other side observing it, you know that it's ending, but people are weird. Sometimes when things are ending, we have like this adrenaline rush to where we want to try one more time to see if we can make it work, and put in a lot of energy um, into it, or even just the feeling of like planning that new adventure. We may feel happier around people, even if it's them we're leaving. As we're secretly planning away things with that Piscean energy that we're leaving into the, like, we're psyching ourselves up for that leap of faith that the Fool takes, that new adventure that the Page of Wands is going on. And it's so funny now. I just think about it. Yeah, we've got Wands cards and Swords cards with the Aries Libra stuff, so definitely communication stuff, and also heart stuff, because the Wands have a lot to do with heart chakra stuff, and so healing of the throat chakra and the heart chakra, which is really good. It's really good energy. All right, I'm going to leave this here. I really appreciate all of you who came in to watch this weird rambling. I'm not a great communicator when Mercury is in Pisces. I'm not a horrible one, but I'm also not the best of one, and that's okay with me. I know others have been going through that, so if you have too, just know a couple more weeks, and that energy will move into Aries. And if you're much more used to being really good communicator, that's when the energy will likely become more stable in communication, although it may be a little bit volatile. So, like if you feel like you or so and or others around you have had kind of an emotional communication constipation thing going on, wait till Mercury goes into Aries. You're likely going to see that open up a lot. All right. Bye bye.